other day, but I still have my own student loans to pay. Well, the check's in the mail and the bills are due. The interest on my loans continues to accrue. When you're catching up, that I don't know when, but we'll be filing chapter 10, yeah. Love the kids are expensive though, man. People put pressure on me. Financial pressure with my son. Are you saving up for his college yet? I haven't even paid for my college, man. Are you kidding me? I'm gonna have to walk him up through the financial aid line to the people I still know. Yeah, I got tab going, right? We're good. Yeah, no, turns out I am alive.
It hurts.
It hurts.
It hurts.
Don Friesen, that's Don Friesen. You can check him out on the internet. Thanks for listening to WBAI. We hope we're bringing some light to your morning. It is not a hurricane up here, 66 degrees and sunny, fair skies going up to 78 degrees. Not looking at any rain today. Tomorrow, which is Friday, it's going to be 72, and we are looking at a 50% chance of rain. Now, I don't really understand how they're saying a hurricane's coming our way, but on Saturday it's going to be sunny and 79, and on Sunday it's going to be 78. So I would keep your eye on making plans. I think it's supposed to, because if you look at the geography, we're like tucked into New York Harbor a little bit, and it's going to keep skirting, but it might do some damage up in Massachusetts. So keep your eye on it. It's in South Carolina now as a Category 3. Unusual because it was a 2 and then it strengthened back up to a 3. So we are keeping our eye on that. And of course, the storm has been made worse by climate change. Yesterday, CNN had that climate town hall. Now, the Democratic National Convention would not allow, or the DNC would not allow there to be a climate change debate. But CNN said, we'll do it. And they had a climate change forum where each of the chosen, I'm not really sure how they chose their people, whether they asked everyone to come and then only certain ones came, or if they asked the front runners to come, but then there were some that don't seem like front runners up there. We got some clips, the important things you want to know, some of the important things you want to know about what happened. Elizabeth Warren was there. She talked about staying focused on the biggest factors in adding to the climate crisis. Here's Elizabeth.
The president announced plans to roll back energy-saving light bulbs, and he wants to reintroduce... Today, the president announced plans to roll back energy-saving light bulbs, and he wants to reintroduce 4 different kinds, which I'm not going to burden you with, but one of them is the candle-shaped ones, and those are a favorite for a lot of people, by the way. But do you think that the government should be in the business of telling you what kind of light bulb you can have?
Oh, come on, give me a break. You know...
Is that a yes?
No, look, there are a lot of ways that we try to change our energy consumption and our pollution. And God bless all of those ways. Some of it is with light bulbs, some of it is on straws, some of it, dang, is on cheeseburgers, right? There are a lot of different pieces to this, and I get that people are trying to find the part that they can work on and what can they do, and I'm in favor of that, and I'm going to help and I'm going to support. But understand, this is exactly what the fossil fuel industry hopes we're all talking about. That's what they want us to talk about. This is your problem. They want to be able to stir up a lot of controversy around your light bulbs, around your straws, and around your cheeseburgers. When 70% of the pollution, of the carbon that we're throwing into the air comes from 3 industries, and we can set our targets and say by 2028, 2030, and 2035, no more. Think about that right there. Now, the other 30% we still got to work on. Oh no, we don't stop at 70%. But the point is that's where we need to focus. And why don't we focus there? It's corruption. It's these giant corporations that keep hiring the PR firms that does that. Everybody has fun with it, right? Gets it all out there. So we don't look at who's still making the big bucks of polluting our earth. And the time for that is past. We have a chance left in 2020 to turn this around, but we are we are running out of time on this one. So we've got to do this in 2020, and that means the first thing we've got to do is we've got to attack this corruption head on in Washington.
Question from a listener who was concerned about the protections for the ocean under the Green New Deal. Let me see if I can get that one because we had a little trouble getting that one. Maybe it was one of the more popular ones. Here it is.
This is from Bren Smith. He lives in New Haven, Connecticut. He was a commercial fisherman. Now he works as a shellfish farmer. Brent, what's your question?
Hi, Brent.
My oyster farm was destroyed by 2 hurricanes. Now warming waters and acidification are killing seed coast to coast and reducing yields. Those of us that work on the water, we need climate solutions and we need them now. The trouble is the Green New Deal only mentions our oceans one time. This is despite the fact that our seas soak up more than 25% of the world's carbon. So what's your plan for a Blue New Deal for those of us working on the ocean?
I like that.
How do we make sure that all of us can make a living on a living planet?
So I thank you. I think it is a great question. I think he's got it exactly right. We need a Blue New Deal as well. Good for you. You know, I just want to say on this one about the oceans, the rising acidification and the fact that now in Boston, right, the lobsters moved to Maine because it's too warm in the waters and the food for them doesn't grow appropriately and so on. I talk to folks who fish commercially off our shores, down by New Bedford, up by Gloucester. You know what they tell me? They keep pulling stuff up that they don't even know what it is. And so what do? I talked to one who said, so I call my brother-in-law who fishes commercially off the coast of Florida because I send him pictures and he says, oh yeah, we used to catch those down here, but now they've moved to Boston and to the waters around Massachusetts and New England. So here's what really scares me. This isn't slowing down. It's speeding up. Where are they going next? And what are we going to be left with? We count on our oceans for life, not just for food, but what it means in our entire climate. So I love it. You want to call it a Blue New Deal? Count me in. But part of getting the carbon out of the air, out of the water, out of the soil, is also about the change in what's happening in our oceans, these big dead patches now and the patches of trash, which goes back to a point I was making earlier. And that is we can't just think about cleaning up the United States of America. We cannot think about from the East Coast to the West Coast, plus Hawaii and Alaska. We can't just think from the Canadian border down to the border with Mexico. We have to think about the whole world. And that's why many of my plans intersect with our global opportunities and responsibilities. Like I said, lots of plans, elizabethwarren.com/climate, because we got to be working on all fronts.
She sounds good, but I wish she had more specifics on the Blue New Deal. I'll be waiting to hear about that. She did say, let's take some plastic out of there, which is a good idea. You know, the sea lions, I think it's sea lions, have been living now on the coast of Cape Cod, and they're attracting more sharks. So there are more shark attacks. A friend of ours actually got attacked by a shark. Shockingly enough, you don't usually know the person who's in the news, but a friend of ours got bitten by a shark, and he knew the thing that you do, which is punch the shark in between the eyes. And he did it, which is shocking because he's not like a giant muscular guy. You would think you'd need to be a little Hulk Hogan-y in order to punch a shark and let the shark let you down. But that's exactly what happened. And he was just swimming with his family in a swimming beach, you know, not very far off the coast. So it is important to be careful. Just warning folks, things aren't like they once were.
Well, I'm in suspense. So he punched him, and what happened?
And the shark opened its mouth.
Oh, okay.
That's what happens. When you punch a shark, there's something sensitive there. I wish I knew more about the science. If our callers do, they can call in. My husband's probably jumping up and down. How do you not know? Because he's a shark studying expert. But you can call us and tell us if you know, 212-209-2877. Yeah, and they'll open their mouth. So do that. Or poke them in the eye if you can't reach the top. If you know, that's if you still have the presence of mind after they chomp your arm. So Yeah, but that she's right about the animals that are moving up and that the things are changing. I don't know if we're going to be able to really stop that in order to let this particular oyster fisherman be able to, live as an oyster fisherman anymore. He may have to move to what? Greenland in order to fish oysters. Not sure. Bernie Sanders was also there, as is Castro and Harris and Biden. We have some clips from those folks as well. Again, Bernie took a question about how gender justice intersects with the issue of climate change. Here's Bernie.
Human population growth has more than doubled in the past 50 years. The planet cannot sustain this growth. I realize this is a poisonous topic for politicians, but it's crucial to face. Empowering women and educating everyone on the need to curb population growth seems a reasonable campaign to enact. Would you be courageous enough to discuss this issue and make it a key feature of a plan to address climate catastrophe?
Well, Martha, the answer is yes. And the answer has everything to do with the fact that women in the United States of America, by the way, have a right to control their own bodies and make reproductive decisions. And the Mexico City Agreement, which denies American aid to those organizations around the world that allow women to have abortions or even get involved in birth control, to me is totally absurd. So I think, especially in poor countries around the world, where women do not necessarily want to have large numbers of babies, and where they can have the opportunity through birth control to control the number of kids they have, something I very, very strongly support.
Sanders also talked about who would foot the bill for the expensive programs to combat the climate crisis, because that's what the right wing always asks. So basically a CNN town hall is right-wing questions, right-wing framing of issues, and then people, if it's a Democratic town hall, trying to recapture the narrative over there. Here's Sanders on that point.
There's folks out who just heard you talk about higher taxes and taxpayers out there paying more. Would you guarantee to the American public tonight that the responsibility for $16.3 trillion, which is a massive amount of money, wouldn't end up on taxpayers' shoulders?
Well, it'll end up on some taxpayers' shoulders. If you are in the fossil fuel industry, you're going to be paying more in taxes, that's for sure. Yeah. And I happen to believe in general that at a time when we have massive levels of income and wealth inequality, where the richest 3 people in this country own more wealth than the bottom half of American society, where major profitable corporations like Amazon, who made over $10 billion in profits last year, didn't pay a nickel in taxes. Am I going to guarantee Jeff Bezos he's not going to be paying more in taxes? No, I won't.
Hey, the kids are cheering for their future. You're listening to Waking Up. I'm Juliana Forlano.
King Downing.
We're covering the CNN Town Hall, Climate Town Hall, that CNN put together after the DNC would not. I got to say, I kind of like the town hall format a little bit better, even though most people aren't going to have 5 full hours to watch town hall. Maybe you can put it on in the background when you're making the sandwiches, but most people are not going to be able to do that. They're just going to get the roundup from media outlets like this one or their other favorite ones. But it is a little bit better than just having them in almost like a violent boxing match of words. Does our democracy have to be a violent boxing match of words?
I like this format, but there was one point you made that I wish they would follow up and nail these folks down with some specifics, because it's still kind of platitudinal. And I wish they would say, okay, so you just got to ask that question about the blue. What exactly are you going to do? And not just kind of talk about it in sort of quasi-religious terms.
I wish she really had said something like, well, the Green New Deal is going to affect the ocean, even though it doesn't say the Blue New Deal, because if it takes carbon out of the atmosphere, then the acidification process of the ocean would be lessened. And so that would be adjudicated that way. She didn't kind of draw the line that needed to be drawn there, at least not in a really clear way. I saw her dancing around it, but not drawing it. And I don't know if she actually has, we're left not knowing if she has a plan about the oceans. Although I do like her mindedness around this isn't just about the U.S. anymore. That That was good. Yeah, we want to go in there with, I have a follow-up, right? Kamala Harris was there. She spoke on the industries we'll need to take on in order to fight the climate crisis.
Listen, guys, let's just be really clear. Donald Trump, he's got everybody excited about those crazy tweets. Meanwhile, with this hand, quietly undoing regulations that were built up over years, including incredible stuff that the Obama administration did, and quietly undoing that. So everybody's distracted by the crazy tweet. Meanwhile, completely deregulating industry. And so, yeah, we're going to have to build it back up. But it is not necessarily about hiring a massive number of people. It's about priorities. It's about saying to the people who are there, listen, I'm prepared to back you up when you put in place enforcement against these big polluters, against the fossil fuel industry for polluting the air we breathe and the water we drink.
One powerful industry is an alternative to traditional fuels like oil and gas, and that is nuclear. And I want to go to a video question now from David Gaines. He's a retired National Park Service employee, and his question comes to us from Yarmouth, Maine.
Good evening, Senator Harris. Given the existential threat to humanity posed by global warming, do you believe that the time has come to put past nuclear power failures in perspective and embrace a new and smarter generation of nuclear power technologies, given all that has been learned and the scale of the crisis that we're confronting today?
Thank you. So the biggest issue that I believe we face in terms of nuclear energy is the waste. And what are we going to do with that? And I will tell you that unlike this administration, which on an issue that is next door to me, which is Yucca Mountain, let me tell you, I will never, like, that's a non-starter for me. And which is the kind of disposal that's happened at Yucca Mountain, and also taking away that state's ability to make decisions. I mean, literally, Aaron, they were in the middle of the night, this administration, in the middle of the night, carting in waste into Yucca Mountain without the authority and the permission of the leaders of the state of Nevada. So that's how I feel about it, that, you know, we have to make sure that this is not about the federal government coming in and making decisions about what each state can do in terms of the nuclear waste issue, which is the biggest part of the concern about nuclear energy.
So Senator Sanders now says he wants to phase it out, get rid of nuclear power. And just for context, this country gets 20% of its power from nuclear power. So to say that is not a small thing. Yeah. But he wants to phase it out. Is he right? Do you agree?
Listen, we have to figure out what we're going to do about the waste. And we still don't have the best ideas yet. People are working on it, but we have to figure it out. But my bottom line is that I'm not going to allow the federal government to go in and impose its priorities on any state. It's going to have to be those states who make that decision.
Love states' rights when it comes to anything that has to do with civil rights or women's rights.
So the waste won't go to California, but it'll go to Mississippi or Arkansas or someplace which has no money and has no power.
Right, right. Well, they're dumping it right in Nevada there. I also did. Is there such thing as clean nuclear? That sounds to me like a catchphrase, like a clean coal technology catchphrase we don't have.
Remember George Carlin, military intelligence and other kinds of words like that?
Yeah,
he said
exactly.
A contradictory. Clean nuclear. I don't even.
Clean and nuclear. Yes. Pre-boarding, I remember, was one of Carlin's, like, for airplanes. There's no pre-boarding. It's all just boarding. Anyway, but she did make that point. I would think she could say, yes, we need to phase it out. It's a timeline issue.
Why can't she agree with Sanders? I mean,
why can't she agree with Sanders?
I've heard Sanders and Warren, I think, say, hey, yes, I agree with that idea, and then here's my spin on it. That would be the way to do it, to me.
Yeah, like we're all in this boat together kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, some people are used to fighting. She's a lawyer, right?
And a prosecutor on top of that.
She's like, no, that's my way. But hey, she made a lot of good points about the states' right thing. Also, Julian Castro was there. He took a question from a registered nurse from Brooklyn in the house, which isn't so hard because we were in Manhattan, but still, it was a national coverage thing. He took that question about environmental racism.
Good evening. I work as a registered nurse at Interfaith Medical Center in Brooklyn. We are considered a safe net hospital located in a low-income community. Oftentimes, communities like these are the ones who suffer the most from climate change and environmental inequities. What will your administration do to give voice to this issue, also known as environmental racism?
Yeah. All right, thank you very much for the question. Thank you for your work as a registered nurse. We know that this climate crisis is going to affect all Americans and all folks around the world. But as I mentioned a little bit earlier, we also know that it's going to hit some people particularly hard. People are the first people to get affected. And after I announced my campaign, the first visit that I made was not to Iowa or to New Hampshire. It was to San Juan, Puerto Rico, to tell the people of the island there that we were with them and that we would make sure that they could recover from Hurricane Maria. When I was there, I went into this neighborhood called La Playita, and I met on the street a gentleman who was 90 years old, who had a can of paint on the ground. He was like rail thin, and he was painting back his property that had been damaged in the hurricane. And I think about that gentleman in La Playita. I think about poor communities along the East Coast. I think about, frankly, I connect the dots to places like Flint, Michigan. And I know that too often times it's people who are poor, communities of color, who take the brunt of storms that are getting more frequent and more powerful. And so my plan actually calls for new civil rights legislation to be able to address environmental injustice, including making sure that there is a private right of action to go to file lawsuits against polluters. This is the way that it used to be until a Supreme Court case a few years ago. The problem is that when you get administrations like the Trump administration, you can't rely on the government to make a claim. I want to vest that power back in the people so that when we can show a disparate impact of certain practices of companies, of polluters, that everyday Americans are able to file suit to try and get some sort of recourse. I also believe that we need to invest in these communities and their ability to withstand storms and other natural disasters, in their ability to have something as simple as clean water or breathe clean air. When I was Secretary of Housing, one of the things that I found out was that 70% of HUD-funded public housing or subsidized housing was within a mile of a Superfund site. Think about that. That's the environmental injustice and racism that we're dealing with. And my plan would equip Americans with the tools to fight back and also make investments so that we can bring justice to right now what is a tremendous injustice. And my plan would equip Americans with the tools to fight back and also make investments so that we can bring justice to right now what is a tremendous injustice.
I'm sorry, but he didn't need to restate the question for 4 minutes before that's why these things are 5 hours long.
Yeah, and it saved him from saying what he really needs to say. Okay, great. He finally got to the end, and he talked about a private cause of action. I'm down with that. But when somebody's talking about racism, the key change that needs to happen is that that you should be able to move forward if you prove disparate impact and not intent to discriminate.
Oh, you mean through the legal system?
Yeah, I mean, just to have the private cause of action. If you can't prove intentional racism, then you still can't get anywhere. So he spent too much time because he didn't
I like
put a
how
lot
he
of
said he
thought
raced
into.
out to Puerto Rico. Have we seen any any electeds? I know Puerto Rico
That
is
was good.
part of the U.S., but have we seen people run? I would think we'd be seeing some of these rich people running out to the Bahamas to check on their money, to see if their money is still okay. It's one of the offshore havens, is it not? Are the banks still standing?
He also didn't call on anything his administration would do to even give the guy a bucket of paint or do anything. He didn't say, we're going to, as an administrator, I'm going to send billions of dollars down there and I'm going to repair the island.
Yeah, this whole thing about how government is the problem, I feel like some candidates are tiptoeing around and not able to say no. Like, some candidates say, no, we can use government as the solution. We are the government. It's not me, it's us. Just using a slogan that one of those fellas use. But some of the other candidates tiptoe around the idea that government can be a solution if you allow it to certain things. I mean, why we have a government if we're not pooling our resources to make things better? You're listening to Waking Up. I'm Juliana Forlano in the studio with
King Downing.
Hey, we're going to take a brief break and then we'll be right back with Jamia Wilson, one of our recurring guests from the Feminist Press. We'll be right back. Before, I'm not afraid anymore, except for public singing, which I am afraid of. Belinda Carlisle, thank you, Alana. That was wonderful. I hope everyone out there enjoyed it as much as we did. I hated having to cut it off, but I'm overjoyed that our next guest is joining us, so I wanted to get that right away. The Equal Rights Amendment, we're going to talk about that. It obviously enshrines the equality of women in law. It should really be a given. Almost 100 years after women achieved the right to vote, it's about time the Constitution recognizes us as equal. But even though Congress passed the Equal Rights Amendment in 1972, it still isn't ratified, and that does not satisfy the way a ratification would. It placates. Anyway, that's because we're waiting on one more state to sign off on it, and women are rising up to make sure that last state does its job. We're speaking with regular guest Jamia Wilson today about what the Equal Rights Amendment would mean for women in America and how activists are making sure it gets ratified. Jamia is an activist, feminist, storyteller, media maker, executive director, and publisher of the Feminist Press at the City University of New York. Jamia, thank you so much for joining us again on the program.
Thank you so much for having me, and I love your singing.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Yes. I have nightmares about public singing. I think there was some childhood trauma around church singing and two people in the family being way better than me. And so I got anyway, now I'm a radio host. So, okay, let's get back to the important thing here. Can you talk about why the Equal Rights Amendment is so important right now, and what would ratification do?
The Equal Rights Amendment is extremely important because it's really chilling to think about the fact that as women, we are not equally protected under the Constitution. But this is something that many people do not know, including many women. And so it's really important for us to understand that in order for us to realize the fullness of our rights under the Constitution, we have to have an Equal Rights Amendment that protects us all and ensures that all of us can have access to constitutional equality, because 80% of people actually think it already exists. And one thing that is really, really exciting to me is that we're really, really close right now. Virginia could flip blue in November, and they could take up the ERA by January 2020.
Oh my gosh, that would be
lost
amazing.
there last year by just one vote.
Was it Phyllis
very
Schlafly
close.
again? Did she come back from the dead to redo her old work?
You know what's so interesting about it is I was just talking to some people yesterday about how we think about how the ERA was something that was a bipartisan issue, that this was something that was widely adopted as an idea that everyone wanted to get behind on all political sides of the aisle. And Phyllis Schlafly and her cohort during that time worked really hard to create myths about what would happen if the ERA were passed. And one of the things that they actually used was to create cultural fear around bathroom usage. And that
well, here we are.
actually led into the xenophobia around trans equality and bathroom rights as well. So this has been a really long fight, and they were very much utilizing false truths in order to make people feel
Jamia,
like the ERA was something it wasn't.
I'm slightly confused in terms of the bathroom usage we have. Before the current movement for trans rights, we had women's bathrooms and men's bathrooms. Was that an issue of contention back when in 1972? Like what was it they were so opposed to?
So because they kind of had a far fundamentalist religious agenda at that time, one of the things they did, and kind of also understanding that culture wasn't as evolved as it is right now about having these conversations, that they said, oh, well, if we have an Equal Rights Amendment, one of their talking points was that, oh, we will have men going into women's bathrooms, is what they said at that
clutch
time.
my pearls.
And so that was, kind of the underpinning of
That's ridiculous.
them being able to kind of roll that out and expand it as the cultural conversation around LGBTQ issues began to become even more amplified. And so it's really, really important that we think about that history as well, and that sort of opposition, and make sure that we understand the actual facts, because this is actually a very, very popular mainstream issue. It says American as apple pie. People want an ERA, and people understand that this is good for all of us, no matter what political spectrum that we lie under. We need constitutional equality.
Well, with the whole fight against forced birth, shall we say, and women's health care, abortion rights, etc., it seems like the ERA may. It seems like what am I trying to say here, King? It seems like the ERA would be a Democratic woman's, desire, that Republican women are kind of bought into the patriarchy. That's why they're voting that way. I don't know, or one of the reasons. Can you talk a little bit about whether it has become a political issue these days, or a partisan issue?
What I think is really interesting about the math that I've seen around polls is that 94% of Americans support constitutional equality. So it's really showing that people widely kind of accept this as a principle that they think we should all have. I think a big part of the problem is that a lot of people believe that it's already there and enshrined because that's what they've been told. But if we also kind of go back, we can look at decisions that were made by the late Justice Scalia, where he actually would mention the lack of an ERA to justify discriminatory positions.
Boo.
So they also understood that not having an ERA was something that was a function of keeping us away from gender progress.
We're going to open up the We're going to open up the phone line, so if folks want to call in and ask a question of our guest or make a quick comment that she might be able to respond to. We only have a few more minutes with our guest, so make sure to keep your questions tight and about the subject. Our phone line is 212-209-2877, 212-209-2877.
Jania, I wanted to ask, what has been the role of black women in moving this slowly forward state by state? And once it's passed, and it will be passed, and I'll be breaking out the champagne, what do we do to make sure that black women are equally protected under the Equal Rights Act?
Thank you so much for this really important question. So I am on the advisory council for the ERA, and I'm a black woman, and I'm one of many black women who are part of this movement. And I think you brought up something that's really important, because many of us in the movement are working hard to really voice the real history of the ERA and the fact that women of color and black women specifically have always been a part of this fight. But the way that it's been portrayed in the media is often with antiquated images of signs with suffragists in it, and mostly white women featured in those signs during times when black women were pushed out of the conversation systemically and structurally, and media conversations and beyond. And so it's really important that we shine a light on the fact that the woman who's running the ERA coalition right now, the CEO, is a black woman. The woman before her was a Latinx woman. And that women of color are at the heart of this movement. One of the congresswomen who's been pushing this forward is also a woman of color. There's a black woman from my home state in the Carolinas who also has been really involved and engaged. And so there's just so much that isn't being spoken about that needs more conversation in the public culture. And I think that it is important that we talk about the fact that the ERA has been expanded. So there's been an expanded ERA, and the ERAcoalition.org talks about this to make sure that we have intersectional points within the legislation. So as time has evolved since 1972, we've also evolved in terms of how we've seen the ERA functioning. And you will see that the input and impact of black women and other women of color has been in this movement, as well as shaping the agenda that we have now for this new generation of the ERA.
We're speaking with Jamia Wilson. She's the executive director and publisher of the Feminist Press at the City University of New York, and the former Women Action and the Media executive director. Jamia, we have some callers on the line. Let's see if we can get some questions for you. Caller, your name and where you're calling from.
Yes, my name is James from Brooklyn.
Hi, James. What's your question?
Okay, the one who was speaking, what was her position again?
She is the executive director and publisher of the Feminist Press at the City University of New York. What's your question?
And she's black, she said she was?
She is black.
Yes, I am black.
Yes?
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Oh, that's the question. Are you black?
Yes, I most definitely am.
How black are you? That's the question. Oh, Madon.
The last time I checked, definitely.
Well,
yes.
I'm assuming that James had a similar question to what King did, and what happens is when people call in, we ask them to turn their radio down, so that means sometimes they can't hear the question that just came before them. So thanks, James, for the call. Call back anytime. We appreciate it, and you gave us a little bit of a laugh as well. Caller, you are on the air. Your name and where you're calling from.
Good morning, Thomasina from Bergen County.
Oh, on the first day of school, I've been wondering where you've been. I have missed you. Okay, well, we only have a quick.
I've been laying on the couch for 2 months.
Yeah, I hear you. Not getting up at 7 a.m. Your question for Jamia.
My question is, this is something that I really don't understand. If we have the 14th Amendment, and probably King can speak to this, if we have this 14th Amendment, which says we have equal due process under the law, that we have equality under the law, I really don't understand. I mean, of course, I'm all for the ERA, but I feel like we have the 14th Amendment. We have the right to abortion through Roe v. Wade. We are being attacked right now. I don't see what the ERA is going to change about that. Like, we need to get our abortion rights in order using the 14th Amendment and using all of the laws we have right now, because by the time we get the ERA, we could have, one place in the whole country to get an abortion.
Thomasina, that's a great question. Let's get a response from Jamia, and it's nice to hear back from you. Again, I have personally missed you, and sometimes I've even called for, hey, where's Thomasina? She knows about these things. Jamia, your thoughts about this?
Yeah, so this is a question that we receive a lot. And as you know, the 14th Amendment was ratified in 1868 after the Civil War to deal with race discrimination. But also, the ERA would require courts to go beyond the current application of the 14th Amendment by adding sex to the list of suspect classifications protected by the highest level of strict judicial scrutiny. So it's really important for us to have an ERA. Specifically, if you look at some of the other rulings, like the 2011 late Supreme Court decision by Scalia, where he disregarded 40 years of 14th Amendment precedent when he stated that the Constitution does not protect against sex discrimination. And that was what I was getting at a little bit earlier about the fact that we actually need to have protections against this.
Does he have a daughter?
So,
Sorry, I'm mad at him even though he's not there anymore. Go ahead. Keep going.
Yes, and I think, and so it's really important because that remark has actually been cited as evidence of why we need to have clear legislation, clear equal rights amendment to guarantee that regardless of someone's judicial philosophy, agenda, point of view, that the Constitution will be interpreted to prohibit sexual discrimination in any point. So it's really important for us to have it for that reason and many more, but also because the expanded Equal Rights Amendment includes other forms of discrimination like disability and faith and national origin and color and pregnancy. And so all of this actually folds into the reproductive justice considerations that Thomasina was talking about as well. And it ensures that we can have more protections and go deeper.
Jamia, thank you so much for joining us on the program. Jamia Wilson, the executive director and publisher of the Feminist Press at the City University of New York, and also so much more than that, author. We've had you on for your books and just really a powerful force in the social justice movement for over a decade, I would say. Jamia, thanks again. Where can folks go if they want to, our listeners go, if they want to get involved to support this hair's breadth movement to get the ERA actually passed?
Please join me and join the ERA Coalition at eracoalition.org. And right now we also have a really awesome T-shirt campaign that we launched for Women's Equality Day, and proceeds from this T-shirt made by Michael Stars will go to support this really important work. So there's a wide spectrum of ways that people can get involved, from donating to advocacy to getting the shirt and wearing the shirt, and also just educating people in your life and letting them know that we don't have constitutional equality, and this is a fight of our lives to make sure that all of us have access to it.
Thank you so much, Jamia. I appreciate it, and I appreciate the work that you did. What a great segment that was. Answered all the important questions. I appreciate it so much. And now we're going to be talking about what is coming up on our 5 p.m. show here on WBAI. You're listening right now to Waking Up in the Morning with Juliana and King. We are very happy. We hope you're having a wonderful day getting those kiddies off to school if you're doing that today. And also watch out, because it's going to be all crazy with the school buses out there. If you're in Newark, leave a little bit early. It's like getting stuck behind a garbage truck. Remember, you have to stop the minute they stop, so you can't go around. You get a nice fat ticket from the law.
I wonder what the schools there are doing about water.
Good question.
We'll dig into that.
Thomasina, call us back.
Yeah.
She should know. Oh, yeah, that's great.
And I'll talk to Vincent. Maybe he knows.
Maybe he knows. Excellent. And if you know, you can call us at 212-209-2877 either today or tomorrow. But right now we have Jeff Simmons from Driving Forces on the line. Jeff, what are you going to be talking about today on the show?
Well, thank you so much for having me on the show today. Today at 5 o'clock, I've got New York City Controller Scott Stringer on in studio to take phone calls.
Wow.
I worked for the Controller's Office for 8 years and dealt with a lot of audits. So I know we're going to get a ton of phone calls from people who want to tell the Controller what he should be auditing in the city.
Ooh. What do you, okay, I'm going to give out the phone number so you can put it in your phone, 212-209-2877. That's our listener call in line. Jeff, where do you think this conversation's going to go? What are the main topics that you think that New Yorkers are going to want to press our comptroller about?
Oh, I have to tell you, just from listening to your show this morning, I'm going to start off and talking about Rikers, because you did as well. And given that he has weighed in on this for years and called it an urban shame at one point, I want to know what he feels should happen next, if he feels the mayor's been aggressive enough on this or has been behind the 8 ball.
Well, we're glad we could help.
Thanks.
That's why we're on first, to give everybody good ideas for the rest of the run.
And then we get to sit around and hear the answers that you dig up.
Right. It's a good system here.
Yeah.
Jeff, we missed Celeste. Have you heard from her? Is she okay?
She posted on her Facebook last night, because she's been moving to Boston. She posted this really adorable photo of one of her dogs in a giant vacant room. Her home is going to look beautiful. But the good thing is, regular listeners of WBAI are still going to hear her voice on the show, because on Sunday night she's going to start doing periodic news reports to start off the City Watch shows at 6 o'clock.
That is terrific. Oh, that's good. We'd hate to lose her. She's a gem.
I agree.
Yeah, she sat in for us when we're out of town. She's our yeah.
This is why I had to take off for 2 weeks, just to be able to cope with this.
Yes. Well, we've missed you also, and it is nice to have your voice on the morning show. We put your music behind you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. It always reminds me of college when I hear that song.
I love it. Driving Forces, 5 p.m. on WBAI 99.5 FM, which is what you're listening to right now. Thanks, Jeff, for being on the program. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much. I look forward to talking with you again.
Just FYI, you can also listen to WBAI on WBAI.org. So again, if you're busy at 5 p.m., after you've picked up your kids and they're going to be completely crazed, right? Because first day of school, they're all wound up and tired. I remember that. I remember I got stung by a bee on the first day of kindergarten, and that set off my educational experiences for 20 years.
At school, or was it at home?
It was on the way to the bus stop.
Oh,
it was
yeah.
it was such a, those traumatic memories, they just stick with you. You remember them so super duper clearly, and that was one. And I remember our neighbors ran out with a big jug. We had Hungarian neighbors, and they ran out with a big jug of like vodka. They said, "Put the vodka." Well, I don't know if that's a Hungarian accent, but pretty much that's, my mom's like, "No, we're going to get some rubbing alcohol," but what's the difference?
I was afraid you were going to say that's when you took your first drink.
Yes, and now here we are. Here's getting my chip today. Here we are. Yeah, no, I think my mom just didn't want me to smell like vodka as a kindergartner on my way to my first day of school. I enjoyed this show. I hope you enjoyed it as well. We look forward to having you on our program tomorrow, because there's going to be a lot of space for callers. We want to know what's going on in your neighborhood. So get ready to tell us. All that and more, of course. We're here every day, 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. Thanks to Jamia Wilson for joining us. Thank you to Alana for getting all those CNN clips. The thing was 5 hours long, and it went late into the night, so it's amazing how well she looks, given the fact that she stayed up all night to do that. Thank you for listening. Thanks, King.
Thanks, Michael G.
Thanks, Michael G. Who else? Thank you for donating and supporting this show. You can become a WBAI buddy still, by the way. In the name of our show, it'd be great. All right, we'll see you tomorrow.